I was on the bus, and it was one of those long buses with the accordion ones, the double long buses. And I was sitting in the very back, and there was this kind of homeless guy yelling at this woman who was just sitting there. And I'm standing between them. And he's yelling at her, and he's just like calling her names, calling her this. You looked at me, just like targeted her, and is just going crazy at her. And then I'm talking to him, and then she reaches in her purse. And I see this, and she pulls out a can of mace. So I reach over, and I gently kind of place my hand just above her, and I keep making eye contact with this guy. Because if she moves to grab this, I'm going to take this from her so she doesn't mace me. And I'm protecting her right now, and me. And so I keep talking to this guy, and he's like, oh, she's just an F in this and a B, and just like laying into her. Crazy. And so I go, hey, I go, you're right. Let's go and talk about this. And I kind of keep pushing him towards the front until I get just as far in my reach, and then he starts to walk towards the front of the bus. And I look back at the woman, and I go, do not mace anyone inside of an enclosed bus. And then I walk this gentleman to the front, I walk this guy to the front of the bus and just sit there, and he just kind of like calms down and yells, and then on the next stop, I kind of just like usher him off. Currently, as of right now, I've been training 15 years, all in Bujinkan. And so my martial arts history, compared to most people, is very different because every other martial artist I've met started when they were like 10. And they did karate, and they did everything else. I did no martial arts because every martial artist I met in like high school and even in college were jerks, and they were just like bullies, and it was just like bullies with training, and I was like, these guys are assholes. I don't want nothing to do with it. So then I go, you know what? And then all of a sudden I met my good friend, Toby Miner. He trained, and he said, no, there's this other thing. It's about like protecting people and doing this. And so I kind of fell into the Bujinkan. And so then all of a sudden I started training with them, and then I met James Morganelli. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, there is actually a greater reason to train. There's a real reason to train where you're protecting yourself and others and your family and your enemies if possible. And sometimes you protect other people, they don't even know you're protecting them. And that's very interesting. Like, I've had strange interactions where, like, I saw this person walking who were on their cell phone, and, like, I'm walking, and I see them walking, I see this car zipping around the corner, and I'm standing here, and I just walked in front of them, so they ran into me. So they didn't get hit by the car. Because if they had kept walking, they were about ready to step into traffic. But the light says walk. But the car doesn't give a crap about that light and was going to run over that dude. And I just stepped in front of him, and he ran into me, and he goes, boom. And I go, oh, and he goes, oh, and I go, sorry. And he goes, sorry. And that was it. Everything about a martial path has made life better. I mean, what do we say? We say it's like good people who want to become better people get trained. And that's what it is.
So I've known Mike Govier for going on 12 or close to 15 years now. Mike is a very genuine person. And when you train with him, that kind of comes out in his training. He's not hiding anything. He's not holding anything back. He's very authentic that way. And he's able to understand the concepts because he's a creative type. There's a big difference between understanding things from a kind of analytic point of view and understanding things from a creative point of view. And the aspect of martial arts that we're dealing with is from the artistic side. It's from the creative side. Martial arts are not a science, even though maybe some people have tried to make it that way. It's really not a science. It's it's a creative endeavor. And when you have somebody like Mike, who is that creative, he's able to understand things from that perspective and really show you what you can do to inculcate the ideas, the messages, and make them more intrinsic to who you are. Mike is one of the best men I know, and it doesn't get much better than that. You have somebody who understands things well physically and can competently carry them out. And on the other hand, you have somebody who's just a great person, somebody that you want to know.
I was young, like, I don't know, just got my black belt, maybe my second degree black belt, like, look at me, all cool. This was after a Friday night class, and we all went out for sushi. And our whole group would go out for sushi, and we have this great sushi night. And we did this consistently. It was the end of a year, and we're hanging out, and we're having a wonderful time. But as we were sitting there in the sushi shop, and this drunk guy is sitting at the sushi bar, and he's just yelling at the sushi chef and the waitress, and he's just being belligerent. And we are a group of 15 or 20 martial artists sitting there waiting for this moment, right? We've been training for a bad guy who's being a bully. And we're like, oh my gosh, this is it. We're going to go get this guy. Pick him up, throw him out there, no ticket, like kick him out. Everyone, sushi for everyone. We're heroes by, curb stomping this guy because he's being belligerent to the whole place. Our teacher, James, gets up and we're like, oh, the show's going to begin. He's going to do this. He's going to go beat this guy up. He goes and sits down next to him. And he says, hey man, looks like you're having a rough day. That's what he leads with. And the guy then says, yeah, I have. I lost my job. He goes, that's awful, is what James says. And he starts talking to the guy. And the guy just becomes a human again, and a human to everyone. And he said he was sorry to the sushi guy and the other people. And he just sat with them for about 5 or 10 minutes and just talked about how crappy this last month had been. And that was a huge lesson in martial arts. Because we all have all the power and all the thing, but you have to know when to use it. And that was not the moment. And it was wonderful to see.
No space. Right?
If I punched, I would have fallen down.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's slow. So when we're crossing the movement. We're crossing our own movement, and I'm not trying to stop him from getting, into what he feels like is a better space. You can't just mash your opponent down into a small cube, fit him into a box. Even if you're capable of doing that, it's not a good strategy. It's not a good strategy. It matters how you win. That's not just like a strategic thing, that's also an ethical thing. It matters. It matters how you win.
When I first started training, I trained for myself because I wanted to protect myself and just have the confidence that I could protect myself. And then that lasted a very short period of time because then I really wanted to do something more with my training. And then I go, oh, I'm really training for my wife. I'm really training for my friends and my family, for the community, for the people in the coffee shop that I'm around. If something happens, I'm going to be there and help them. I'm training for everyone who's around me and any person who happens to be in my personal space to help them if that moment comes up.